Good evening, everyone, and welcome to my unnamed podcast. Today, we're going to talk about social justice activists. Now, around last week, I was in my U.S. history class, and we were talking about progressivism and the social gospel in the 1800s. Now, that got me thinking about social activism and the underlying reasons which people practice it. I ended up doing a lot of research on the topic, and I have come to the conclusion that there are two big reasons why people participate in the field of activism. Those reasons are, it gives people in the field a sense of power, and it inspires community among those affected by the cause. To begin, for those that don't know, social activism is defined by Webster as the doctrine or practice of vigorous social action, especially in support or opposition to one side of a controversial issue. In more simple terms, social activism is when people express their opinions on a societal issue and urge others to take action. Social activism has a great history in our country, with it arguably being connected to the founding of it. Though it wasn't explicitly called social activism, the founding fathers were expressing their opinions on a societal issue and urging others to take action at the time. With our country being founded from social activism, it makes sense that it's played a huge role in our society, from the mid-1800s and the abolitionist movement to the temperance movement in the late 1800s to early 1900s. Social activism is not a new topic for us. Now, my first point is that people who practice social activism typically come from circumstances where they're mistreated and they want power because of it. The reason why they are activists is because they are seeking the power they do not have. Land and Carmichael do an excellent job at illustrating the background activists come from. Land gives a great testimony on how people who get government assistance are uneducated and seen as lesser, while Carmichael gives a similar example on the grave circumstances the black community has faced, specifically saying that black people are individually oppressed as a group because we are black. Poor people and black people are groups that have been historically marginalized and outcasted in society. Thus, they have a great reason for wanting to partake in activism in order to change their circumstances. People want to live a good life, and activism has provided these people an opportunity to fight for that. An additional instance of the circumstances people have been in is shown in Grappin et al.'s research. Grappin and her team state that due to instances of online racism, women undergrads reported higher levels of social anxiety. I view this to be a clear sign of the poor circumstances because often those who have not had a good life are afraid to speak up compared to those who do. It makes sense, as people who have never been put down or experienced discriminatory behavior are encouraged to speak their minds, while people having experienced that may be worried about speaking their minds due to a fear of backlash. Although this is not a guarantee to produce activists, it gives some people the motivation to want to change things how they are, thus leading them to practice activism. Given that many marginalized groups have come from poor circumstances, it is safe to say that activists, who often come from marginalized groups, do what they do because of the mistreatment they have experienced. To add on to my point about many activists having come from underprivileged backgrounds, I believe that practicing activism has given these people power. Coming from marginalized groups, activists have had the odds stacked against them, but they continue to spread the gospel that their groups have power. Carmichael does a great job at illustrating this in his speech, specifically a part where he mentions that white people are the uncivilized ones, not black people.
That when you talk about open occupancy, I know I can live any place I want to live. It is white people across this country who are incapable of allowing me to live where I want to live. You need a civil rights bill, not me. I know I can live where I want to live.
In a world where the black community has been relentlessly seen as uncivilized, Carmichael turns the world upside down with his claim that white people are the uncivilized ones. Doing this gives him and his audience an immense sense of power, because they are now viewing themselves as the superior race, going against centuries of history where they were claimed not to be. It is really a great thing that Carmichael did, ensuring that the black community did not give up and fall into a situation of helplessness. On the topic of power, activism can be used for more sinister purposes, like as a disguise for an extensive reach of power. A current example of this has been Trump's administration in the White House. There have been multiple instances of him and his team using activism as reasoning for their exercise of power, often grossly unjust. Two specific ones are documented in an NBC article about changing the name of a plaza in DC, and Nieb's and Arnold's news article. The articles both show uses of power disguised as activism, with NBC saying that if the plaza was left unchanged, certain appointment funds would be withheld, and Niebs and Arnold claiming that Trump used the detaining of a Palestinian activist to make derogatory remarks about immigrants as a whole.
That was the other problem.
And President Trump, there's this protest leader from Columbia University that the administration is moving to deport, and he said that his arrest is going to be the first of many. How many?
I think we ought to get them all out of the country. They're troublemakers. They're agitators. They don't love our country. We ought to get them the hell out. I think that guy, we ought to get him. I heard his statements too. They were plenty bad. And I think we ought to get him the hell out of the country. I watched him. I watched tape.
Activism has not only been used to give underprivileged people power, but as in the case of the Trump administration, it has been used to keep the people who have power in power by putting other people down. Activism can be used in many ways, either to lift people up or to put people down. Now, on a different note, activism can also create a shared community between people, but this can be a good thing. This can be a good thing as it helps people relate to one another, but it can also be used negatively to promote hatred and delusions. Activism can help promote a positive community, as seen in his Carmichael speech where he calls for black people to stick together. He does this by mentioning a collective experience they have, which is questioning whether or not they are equal to whites. Carmichael is using his activism to promote a positive community between black people, which further helps his cause. Communities can also be a negative thing, as they can promote negative ideals. The Netflix documentary, The Antisocial Network, and an Associated Press article provide key examples of negative communities being fostered by activism. The documentary mentions how the social media website 2channel let them drive deeper into their fantasy lives. And the article uses specific language, such as progressive Democrats and Trump's agenda. They are both using their platforms to promote negative communities, with 2channel enabling people to spread hatred, and the article using divisive language that leads to a divide among our country. Thus, it is clear that people practice activism to harbor a community, whether it be good or bad. Before I end, I would like to thank the sponsor of this podcast, Marvel Rivals. If you didn't notice, the background footage of this podcast has been the hit video game Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals is a hero shooter made by the Marvel company, combining all the characters you know and love with great gameplay, and personally, I have enjoyed it myself. I have way too many hours in this game, and it's really been a fun experience. So thank you, Marvel, for sponsoring this. And to conclude, people practice social justice activism for much more than the surface level cause. Not only can it help people feel included, but it can also lead them to feeling more powerful than they did before. From my research, I believe that there would not be the slew of social justice activists we have today if the only thing that would benefit them would be the cause itself.